Okay, now that we have quorum, I will call this April 13th, 2023 work session to order. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. They are in your packet. It can be electronically moved and seconded. We think. Okay, my vote's not coming up. Oh, you taught me this trick last week. I press F5, right? Nope, that didn't work. I'm in favor of the minutes. Can you just, all right. The only item I have to report in the chair's report is, I hope some of you are more excited about this than me, the lawyer that does really poorly in math, but we're squarely in budget season. Collie and the team have been working on the FY24 budget since January, as the board will adopt a final budget on our June 8th meeting. Between now and then, there will be several opportunities for board members, our jurisdictional partners, and the public to engage. For board members, budget materials will be mailed to us on May 1 in advance of our May 9th special called meeting to review the budget in detail. Public hearings, as required by the MARTA Act, are scheduled for 7 p.m. on May 16th at the Decatur Library and 7 p.m. on May 18th here at headquarters. Those will be available in person and online. Collie will begin briefing our jurisdictional partners throughout May in the second quarter jurisdictional briefings in Clayton, DeKalb, Fulton, commission meetings in the City of Atlanta Transportation Committee. Following all of these committee meetings and factoring in the feedback, our CFO will present the FY24 budget for our consideration at our May 25th committee meeting, and then again for final adoption in the June board meeting. There's a lot of work to be done between then and now, but I'm proud to say that I have every bit of confidence that this will be MARTA's 12th consecutive year of a smart, balanced budget. That's all I really have for the chair's report. If there are any questions on the budget info, then we will turn it over. Next on the agenda, it will be the GM report.
Thank you, Chair Worthy. Just a quick update on the HE Home Station Transit-Oriented Development Master Plan. So as many may know, we've been working with communities in West Atlanta to re-envision that 22-acre parcel of land surrounding HE Homes rail station. We've designed a TOD based on months of feedback gained from these communities and other stakeholders. We've gathered these opinions and the feedback through in-person meetings and a project website. So most recently on March 28th, we hosted a community meeting to unveil the TOD concept for the station. There were over 100 people in attendance, including myself, Atlanta City Council member Andrea Boone, and board member Rod Frierson. So I want to thank those folks for being there. The family of HE Homes was there in full force. Lots of robust interaction. I want to thank Councilmember Boone and Mr. Frierson for their support and for staying after the meeting ended to answer questions and talk more about the project. So the next steps are that Councilmember Boone will sponsor the needed rezoning in order to support the TODs. The master plan will be published on April 20th, and our TOD department will work with contracts and procurement to issue an RFP for the first phase of development. So that is in full swing and moving. The next item I wanted to just touch on and ask Kirk Talbot to come up and speak to the group. Kirk's going to be talking about the effort underway to decommission the current Breeze mobile app and deploy a new and improved Breeze mobile system. Kirk.
Thank you, Mr. Greenwood. Thank you, Board Chair, for your time this afternoon or this morning. Normally, it's a pleasure actually to be doing a briefing on this because normally I'm here asking for something or permission or whatnot. This is simply a briefing on our mobile fare payment app that we have. Next slide, please. We're going to be talking very briefly about the current 1.0 Breeze Mobile that we call, the release of our new Breeze Mobile 2.0 app here subsequently in the next few weeks, and the impacts and benefits to our MARTA customers and riders. Next slide, please. So for those that may not be aware that have transitioned, we released our first version of our mobile payment app in September of 2020. We're currently at the point that we have nearly 100,000 registered users, and we're pulling in about $380,000 a month in revenue through that. So it's the app that you use to scan and ride rail and bus. However, in the version 1.0, and we knew this as we were going along, there were still some functionality gaps that had to be accounted for. Namely, we had always planned, and it was contractually expected, that we would have regional fare partners availability, so Gwinnett, Cobb, Express, that their fare products would be available on the app. Additionally, we anticipated that we would have greater self-management for the riders so that they could go and update their information, subscribe, unsubscribe, whatnot. And the original app was solely QR based. So for those that are now familiar with it, the pattern of dots that allow you to scan at the faceplate and then open the gates. So in order to address these functionality gaps, we knew that we would be having to upgrade the software significantly, and what we're standing now on the precipice of is release of the 2.0, which addresses each of these areas. Next slide, please. What you see here is a timeline of the rollout. We've been working behind the scenes. The 2.0 app actually had a soft launch back in February, meaning we put it out into the Play stores and Apple and whatnot. You can download it, you can utilize it, but we didn't do a large press marketing blitz to say it's now here. Understandably, as we release 2.0, it will be necessary to decommission 1.0, but we have people that are still utilizing passes that they've purchased. So we're working on a parallel process of slowly turning down components of the 1.0 app as we bring up 2.0 and make it available. And as you see here, what that starts with is we disable the ability to buy future-looking passes. So we stop allowing our customers to purchase monthly passes in the 1.0 app in anticipation of eventually turning it off. If you look to the right on this, you'll see that we disable the 1.0 app in June, and then eventually we remove it from the stores, and then we eventually disable the app once 2.0 has been created. Now, it's obviously not ideal that a second app has to be rolled out and people have to download that. In this case, this is not a simple upgrade to the existing app. It's necessary to download the new app, set up an account on the new app. But what it does give us, if you go to the next slide, is a number of benefits that we're not able to release in the 1.0 app, which is why we had to go to a new technology. Specifically, we have regional support for transfers, so we will be able to sell Express, Cobb, Gwinnett passes in there. They will be able to take MARTA passes and transfer like we have on the existing Breeze system, and likewise we'll be able to take transfers from theirs. A fully self-managed account system, which allows individuals to do a number of things initially, where they're able to set up their accounts, permanently or temporarily pause and suspend accounts, and gives them much greater control. But it also allows for the creation of family accounts, sub-accounts, so you can create accounts for your children, you can manage them, that sort of thing. Much faster validation. Before, when you were scanning the 1.0 app, it would take something like half a second, maybe 3/4 of a second, for the system to validate, acknowledge the pass was there. This has significantly cut that time. Anyone that's used it sees the improvements. New methods of validation. So originally with 1.0, you had to scan. People had issues sometimes if their phones had cracked screens or they were dirty or something, like the optics made it challenging. With 2.0, we're releasing the ability to do near field. So it's necessary to just tap your phone. It's no longer necessary to scan it, have everything open. We're also adding stored value options. So our riders will be able to add cash into an account and be able to draw that cash down as they use it. We have enhanced payment options, so now we will have the ability to do split payments, so you can pay for half of a pass on one credit card, put it on another, more of an Amazon experience where you're able to put in discount coupons. You'll also be able to purchase multiple agency passes. And finally, improved stability and more frequent enhancements. With the move to this, we're changing the architecture of the software so that we will be able to release a number of additional capabilities down the road as we work through those. Next slide, please. So what you can expect, should you be aware of what's happening, you'll see a marketing campaign for Breeze Mobile 2.0 going out. We're working with the marketing external affairs team to put out videos and flyers and push as much as possible out to notify people the coming of this new application. As I said, you'll see the decommissioning of Breeze Mobile 1.0 later this summer. You're going to see the Breeze partners become available, their products available on the platform 2.0. And you'll see a string of continued enhancements and capabilities as we continue to move forward. Next slide. That concludes my prepared briefing.
Mr. Talbot, thank you so much. I'll open it up to other board members for questions, but I do have an initial question. In the cases where we have disruption and we have to push out MARTA or Uber and Lyft vouchers or discounts, is there any way we can make this app communicate with the Uber Lyft app, or is that proprietary, over my head, technological stuff that's not possible?
The short answer is the capability can be done, but it's more a negotiation with Uber themselves. And so it would be a contractual negotiation with them about how to do it. Technically, we could do almost anything, right? But we're not at that point in state, and I don't know if Rhonda has any comments on that. But technically, it's possible, but we're not there yet.
Gotcha. Mr. Zagabe?
Thank you. First off, thank you for the update. This is extremely exciting. I think this is a huge rider experience, customer experience enhancement. So particularly the ability to tap. I had two questions just around my capabilities. One, will fare capping be done in this new system? So if I hit like the daily, if I do enough rides to hit whatever it would cost to have a daily pass, will it cap me at that and then I can continue to ride for free?
So the capability has been built into this version that did not exist in 1.0. Technically speaking, we could do that, but that gets into a policy conversation that takes more time. So initially in 2.0, we will not have that. However, we will probably have conversations around what does that look like.
Perfect. No, that I think a really important one, and it's something that I've seen in other agencies. It's a great thing for riders. And the second one was just around, and it goes back to the conversation around technology, but like we've got this app, we've got a planning app, we've got an app for public safety, we had an app for the microtransit pilot, and I know a lot of agencies are trying to move to a single app. It requires a really strong technology vendor. But we'd just love to hear at a high level the roadmap or the thinking on applications.
So it would probably take more time than we have to go into the broad piece, but I can say succinctly what the rollout here of 2.0 is doing is we've stood up the technology so that as we start to identify what is that single app, the fare payment piece can be plugged in as a component, right? At the end of the day, we don't know who the vendor name will be for the singular app, but our vision is all the other functions become components and APIs that tap in so that you get the full functionality in one app, even though the functionality is supplied by multiple vendors. Because unfortunately, that's where the market's at. You've got different vendors supplying different functions. But this vendor has been constructed so that we can plug its functionality into any app.
Mayor Floyd?
Yeah, we're right now taking proposals on replacing the fare gates. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir. We're in the middle of an RFP.
What's the timing on that in relation to this?
So that piece, it's an ongoing RFP, right? So it's out on the street. And I don't know the exact date of when that's to conclude. But this piece, we will be going live with this as an existing application in parallel, right? Because this component, 2.0 is already active and alive. It will be fully the single mobile app this summer. Whereas the AFC project it has to conclude an RFP, we have to award contract, and then we begin the rollout, which will be a multi-year process.
But it won't take 3.0, once we get these new fare gates in, will we have to update this again or change it again?
So I'll give you an update on 2.0 and then answer your question. So the proposals are due for AFC 2.0 on May 25th of this year. that is not only includes, the scope not only includes fare gates or replacing fare gates, but it also includes software enhancements. And proposers are able to provide us solutions such as this one as one system. So we don't want to get into too much detail, at this point, but as the scope asks or, relays, proponents are able to provide us a solution that is comparable to this one as one complete automated fare collection solution. And so to your question, it will likely not be a 3.0 that is separate, but all of this will be as one system when we finish.
Okay, thank you. And nearly 100,000 users on this thing. What's percentage of that? What is the percentage of that? Remind me, if you would, of total users is that 100,000?
You mean out of the total ridership that we
Yeah,
have?
What right now, today?
Certainly. I asked for a report on this just yesterday, and it wasn't by accounts, because sometimes people will buy a ticket and then not use it. So it was looking at revenue. If you compare on a revenue basis, this comes in at about 8%, 8 to 10, just below 10% of total revenue. So Breeze is about 92% of what we collect, and this is now about 8%.
And what's the goal?
Well, we don't have a hard and fast we would like to migrate to. Obviously, there are benefits to having a digital piece. There's no physical card fulfillment, whatnot. When we surveyed to see what the industry has, some agencies have upwards of 50% digital utilization, so mobile ticketing. Others had 5%. So we've already exceeded some properties. But we don't have a hard and fast target that we're looking to achieve.
Okay, I still have a card as a board member to ride
Yes.
free. Why don't I have it on my phone?
We can get you that. We just have to download it on your phone and we can set you up.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
Ms. Williams,
I guess my question is more like a usability question and technology. You talked about the transition from 1.0 to 2.0. I guess what are the barriers to that transition? Why wouldn't it just automatically upgrade you to 2.0 or not let you move around in it, kind of like my Chipotle app does when it's time to upgrade?
So the simple answer is that we're switching out underlying vendors. There was one vendor that had 1.0, and it's a different vendor for 2.0, which means it has to be a separate app that's downloaded.
can we put a message on 1.0 that says you have to go back to the Apple Store, the Android Store, and download 2.0?
Yes, sir. We're looking at multiple ways to notify them, right? Going forward, any future updates to this app will not require a new app download. They'll simply be like your Chipotle app.
Ms. Ide?
Yeah, I think that Mayor Floyd asked most of my questions that I was curious about, but just to make sure I understand, I mean, every station right now has the ability with at least some turnstiles to go in, and those same turnstiles that work with the 1.0 will work with the 2.0.
All turnstiles do, yes.
Okay. When we do what's out for RFP right now, I didn't quite understand that. Will this same app work with the new technology, or you anticipate there will maybe a different app that works with the updated?
So I don't want to guess as to what will be proposed during the RFP, but our
Okay.
vision is that there will be one system that is both physical, Breeze card based, and digital based. So everything will work together seamlessly. From a customer's perspective, it will just be one fare collection system.
Okay. And then this is a really in the weeds question, but I'm so excited about this. And when I was on city council and Mr. Parker would come out, I would always tell him this is what keeps my teenagers and young adult children from riding, is that they don't carry cash or a card. Can you connect this account to your Venmo or Cash App or PayPal, or do you have to have an actual bank card to create an account?
I don't want to answer off the cuff, but we are working with a number of different means of payment
Okay.
through this, so that you can tie your underlying payment to whatever
Okay.
system
Or
you
you
prefer.
can pay for your kids.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
And I didn't get into it, but we're also looking at how do you enable it so you can use your smartwatch to pay? How can
Okay.
you use other things besides just your phone? That capability is built into it from the get-go.
Awesome, thank you.
Mr. Frierson?
Yeah, thank you. This is something that we've been seeing happen in other spaces across the country and other transit system, so it's great to see this move forward. Are these digital readers on the bus lines? I see some of them, but I'm just wondering, are we completely installed on all the buses that they can have
They're
access?
completely on the bus lines,
Okay,
yes.
great. All right, thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Ms. Williamson, back to you.
You likely already answered this, but if somebody downloads the app today, are they getting 2.0 or 1.0?
They're getting 2.0, yes.
Mr. Zagabe, back to you.
Sorry. You said something that made me spark another question, and it may not be related to this, it may be related to the new turnstiles, but the ability to use Apple Pay and other forms of pay, is that, I'm assuming that's a turnstile technology, not unrelated to the app.
It's actually woven at multiple different layers.
Okay.
You could use Apple Pay at the turnstile. You could use Apple Pay as the means of paying for a pass inside the mobile app. And there's another component which people think about, which is how do you load your passes into your Apple Wallet.
Yep.
So there's actually multiple different technologies involved. We're talking about all of them.
So just as it launches, is this Apple Pay integrated so you can put the card in your Apple Wallet and use that?
Not from day
this is-
one, right?
Okay.
So what I tried to focus on is the technologies and the capabilities you can expect on day one.
Yeah.
We have a roadmap where we're talking, and as soon as it's capable, we won't turn that capability on.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Sorry for multiple questions, but this is very exciting.
I get excited. I don't get a chance to geek out like this very often, so thank you.
Any other questions from the board for Mr. Talbot? Back to you, Mr. Greenwood.
Thanks, Chairworthy, and thank you, Kirk. We'll
Thank you.
just conclude with a couple of upcoming events. Some of the information's already in your packets, so I won't go over those, but the Riders Advisory Council is an in-person meeting on May 3rd here at the HQ Atrium. There's a special called board meeting, as Chairworthy had alluded to earlier, and that's happening on May 9th. There's also a MAC meeting on May 9th, which is virtual. And then in terms of APTA commitments, we do have the APTA Transit Board Members Seminar, which is in Birmingham on July 15th, and the APTA Transform Conference in Orlando on October 8th. And that concludes my comments, Chairworthy.
Mr. Greenwood, the May 9th meeting, the special called board meeting for budget, is that going to be here or is that going to be at Justice Sears' firm?
Justice Sears' firm.
Okay. So it'll be back where we did it last year, Smith Gambrell?
Correct.
Okay. All right, with that, I will entertain a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of real estate, litigation, and personnel. Is there a second? Can I please see a vote by hand? Directors to order. First item on the agenda is our public comment section. Mr. Andrews, has the board received any public comments via email or voicemail?
Yes, sir, we have. If you give me a second, I'm sorry to pull them up, but I think we have 5 or so. Yeah, we have 5 emails that have been received for public comment. The first one is from Dr. Ed Williams, speaking again about the RTCAA and his claims that it should not be extended, as well as questioning the bond deals that are moving forward that this board's approved and that will be up for validation later next month. I'm not going to read it verbatim because it's about 7 pages long, but those 7 pages will be included in the actual minutes of the board meeting verbatim. Second message is from Nathan Clubb. Nathan has emailed in supporting the the Atlanta Streetcar East Extension project and feels that it's vital to solving transportation problems on that side of town. Third message is from Wanda Davila. She's the owner of El Patio Pop-Up in Edgewood. And she would like to see different types of transit to solve some of the transportation problems across the city. Fourth one is from Professor Hans Klein from the School of Public Policy at Georgia Tech. He is questioning whether or not MARTA has conducted rigorous analysis of ridership, operating cost, visual presentation, construction, alternative analysis, capital budgets, amongst others. Again, his entire email with his questions will be included in the minutes. And the fifth one is from Matt Ekman. Today you must decide whether to designate the streetcar as a locally preferred alternative. He is opposed to the streetcar extension. So all 14 pages of comments will be included verbatim into the minutes, but that's the overall gist of what they were about.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. We'll now turn to in-person public comments. Just a reminder, the public will not be allowed to yield or donate time to other speakers. The public comment portion of the meeting will not exceed 45 minutes. If the 45-minute time limit is reached before public comments are completed, public comments will be suspended and the board meeting will commence. Public comments will resume at the end of the board meeting. In keeping with previous rules, each speaker is limited to 2 minutes. So the first speaker I have is Miss Jocelyn Ward. Word. Welcome, Ms. Word.
Yes, say this very quickly. On March the 24th at 6:13 a.m., I was at the Art Center station. I used the white phone and for somebody to let me in the restroom. And a MARTA employee came over there while I was standing. They told me to go over there, stand. I waited. When they came, they went in the restroom. Before they went in the restroom, they asked me why I was in a tight. And I said, and then they said, well, you can use the men restroom. I said, I'm not no man, I'm a woman. So they went in, and I didn't think that was right. I called and spoke to Miss Naomi at MARTA Customer Service, and she put a complaint number in for me, 169284. Because 2 things I think that was not right about, asking me was I in tight, and telling me the MARTA employee that had on a blue shirt, black jacket, was I, that I could use the men's restroom. I've called twice about the follow-up, and each time I called, it said it's still under review. I know MARTA has headquarters, have cameras all over the station. They should be able to pull that video, because the employee did not have ID on, but she had a black jacket, blue shirt. I believe she was a bus driver, and I believe what's going to happen in a couple more weeks, that video is going to be filmed over, and I would like somebody to take a look at that, because I don't think that was right for the employee and tell me to use the men's restroom, ask me why I was in a tight. I did make a statement, typed it, and gave it to Miss Vivian. That's my comment. problem.
Thank you, Ms. Word. We have your statement here, and I promise you that's getting addressed right now. The next one is, I'm sorry, I can't read the writing, so forgive me if I mispronounce this. Jeffrey Sharp? Sorry.
No, sorry about my writing. Good afternoon, and MARTA Board, and thank you all for your time and commitment to advancing public transportation. My name is Jareem Sharp. I'm the Vice President of the Casper Hill Neighborhood Association, Secretary of NPU-M, or Neighborhood Planning Unit M, and also the Treasurer of the Atlanta Planning Advisory Board. But more importantly, in context to this comment, I'm an everyday MARTA rider. I've been car-free for about 10 years, starting my journey here in Atlanta, going to New York and many other cities. I'm here today because I recently shared an email with many of the MARTA board members that I was hoping was maybe read into public comment today, but either way, I'm here to do so. And what the email asks is that the MARTA board kindly consider postponing the vote for the Streetcar East extension. And the primary reason for this request is for the MARTA board to consider new vital information that could result in major cost savings, faster construction times, and also improved design. And while the email highlights various issues, two important points that of information that are not mentioned is, one, the general public is still awaiting the results of a recent community engagement survey, and MARTA has confirmed that they are working on those results, but however, as of today, those results have not been made available to the general public. And two, the general public is also still awaiting results of the Irwin Street study. And as we may already know, that's a very important study in regards to the entire streetcar route and how it would be able to perform in mixed traffic. I do believe that those 2 points alone are worth noting in consideration for the postponing of the vote for the Streetcar East extension. But in addition, it does highlight how the City of Atlanta currently has 2 rail networks, a heavy rail network and also a light rail network, and perhaps the Beltline rail network should be an independent rail network that works together in addition. So thank you again.
Thank you very much for those comments, Mr. Sharp. Next, we have Jay Miller.
Good afternoon, and thank you for entertaining our comments. I'm here in favor of mass transit, I'm here in favor of diversity, and I'm here in favor of the Beltline. And any of you who have walked the Beltline know that it is the epitome of diversity. You go out on a weekend or what have you, a nice day, and people from all different quarters are there, and it's heartening rather, excuse me, to see this. But because of that, I'm also very concerned about the streetcar extension. And I'm asking you to please consider delaying any decision about that. Let me give you a brief example of why I'm concerned. At the end of February this year, there was a meeting on Auburn Avenue where we discussing this topic. There were city officials, there was a political representative, and most importantly, there were representatives from all the different neighborhoods who would be affected by this. I don't think it's overstating it by saying that those representatives, without exception, the ones who live along the Beltline, regardless of where it was, where they were situated vis-a-vis the proposed streetcar extension, I should say, were opposed to having that extension placed in their neighborhoods. And the reason is because of the disruption, the noise, and in some cases the taking of private property in order to affect this. And I think it was quite striking by the sentiment. I could talk about a variety of topics, and I know my time is short, but I would bring to your attention, as you probably know anyway, there is cutting technology that's available. This isn't anti transportation or mass transportation. There's technology that's available now that is a lot more efficient, is quieter, and cost a fraction of what this streetcar extension would cost. And it was brought up at the meeting, but the frustration is that doesn't seem to get taken into account. And given the fact that the streetcar was proposed, extension was proposed over 10 years ago, and there's been dramatic changes to the area surrounding the Beltline then. It's just prudent to take into consideration those changes and what is available from a technological standpoint before making a final decision on this. So I ask you, I actually plead with you to please take into account what has happened during this interim period before you make a final decision.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Thank you.
Your time's up. I was trying not to interrupt, but thank you very much for your comment. Matthew Rao.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me here to speak. Thank you to the MARTA board for your service. Today is a day to celebrate. Today is the day that officially you, MARTA's board of directors, will follow through with the commitment to voters and advance a locally preferred alternative of rail for the streetcar extension and deliver the first 1.4-mile section of rail to the Beltline. This project is the first step of a larger 22-mile rail loop that will one day connect to MARTA's heavy rail in all quadrants of our city. On behalf of Beltline Rail Now, I urge you to approve it unanimously today. This project has slowly advanced, benefiting greatly from record levels of public engagement and approvals and reaffirmations from the public and from transit experts every step of the way. Atlanta longs to be a city connected by a transit network designed to free us from car dependency and to create access to important places for those who are most transit dependent. That is essential for our future success and ensures that we remain the capital of the Southeast. This is why 71% of Atlanta voters voted for more MARTA in 2016, with MARTA's own surveys showing that Beltline Rail was one of its most supported projects. There is always some opposition to large infrastructure investments in our future, and there will always be some promised shiny new technology others would tell you is just beyond the horizon without bearing the burden of showing it in action anywhere. Let's join the 15 other American cities actively expanding their light rail networks and streetcar systems. It will show that we can fulfill the promise of more MARTA and end the paralysis of discussing whether and if, and change that to when and how. The city, MARTA, and Atlanta Beltline Inc. fully support this project. We ask you to stand with them and the overwhelming majority of Atlanta residents today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rao. And our final public comment will be from Commissioner Jeff Rader, Commissioner from District 2 in DeKalb. And as an elected official from one of our jurisdictions, I am waiving the 2-minute requirement, but the bylaws do require you keep it under 5. So I'll turn it over to you, Commissioner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I am a now retired or former commissioner of DeKalb County. I do appreciate your indulgence and was relying upon what is in the bylaws in terms of guidelines, so you may just want to clarify that when some people are looking for that guidance. Yes, sir. Today, MARTA is considering the Streetcar East Extension LPA, another step in the bureaucratic process for meeting the expectations of supporters of Beltline rail transit. The adoption of the LPA doesn't advance the feasibility of the project, resolve weak ridership, or address the adverse impacts of such intrusive infrastructure will have on what has become the most successful park-driven economic development success story in Atlanta's history. It does further entrench the expectations of rail advocates for the implementation of a system that not only includes the Streetcar East extension to Ponce City Market, but also anticipates rail transit throughout the Beltline alignment, an impossibly tall order given the reality of transit demand in that corridor. It is the effect of those entrenched expectations I want to highlight, given my experience as a DeKalb County Commissioner for 16 years prior to my retirement last year. Harold Buckley Sr. was appointed by DeKalb to the MARTA board in 1985 and served 30 years until his death in 2016. From day one, he relentlessly pursued his vision, a heavy rail transit extension to Stonecrest Mall. In 2008, coincident with DeKalb's approval of the 13th Amendment to the RTCAA, MARTA committed to including heavy rail to Stonecrest in its engineering report, which defines MARTA's capital expansion plans. MARTA included the Stonecrest extension not because analysis confirmed its feasibility, but instead in order to gain approval for a sales tax extension to support the continued issuance of long-term debt by MARTA. MARTA has adopted 2 LPAs for the Stonecrest HRT, embarked on a suspended NEPA process, and is now in the process of considering another LPA. All these actions have not changed the infeasibility of the project, and in the intervening 17 years, the cost of this expectation has become clear. Because of the empty commitment to Stonecrest HRT, transit development in DeKalb is frozen, and with it, additional local funding for MARTA expansion in DeKalb until Stonecrest HRT somehow comes off the table. That means the top-end BRT project that you're considering can't count on sales taxes from DeKalb County. It also means that the Clifton Corridor line can't rely on DeKalb sales tax funding to extend beyond Atlanta city limits to a logical terminus. In short, MARTA's expedient decision to validate Mr. Buckley's infeasible vision for a transit program has destroyed MARTA's credibility and the potential for expansion in DeKalb until that issue is resolved. In 1999, a Georgia Tech master's degree student articulated a vision of rail transit on the Beltline. The vision was and is not supported by credible ridership to make it competitive for federal funding, and its implementation will greatly diminish the Beltline's successful function as a linear park. MARTA's continued practice of kicking the can down the road through the bureaucratic process will similarly undermine MARTA's credibility in Atlanta, precipitating the same kind of impasse that now is faced in DeKalb. The more MARTA tax won't support the diminished public project list now on the table, and reliance on 100% local funding for the Streetcar East extension is a flashing danger sign. Since Mr. Buckley and Mr. Gravel began to pursue their personal visions, MARTA has gone from the sole direct recipient of transit funding in the region to a subsidiary role with the ATL, GRTA, and other mechanisms in eroding MARTA's once preeminent place in regional transit. I would argue that it is through decisions like the one that you're considering today that MARTA lost that role, and that the expedient of mollifying the persistent visionary will further impede the process of effective transit expansion in the region. Take a step back on the Streetcar East LPA. Tell the truth about the project, its feasibility, and the impact it will have on the linear park and on adjacent development. Offer realistic alternatives that serve real people today, not one person's vision for a retro transit utopia. Thank you for extending my time, and I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, Commissioner Rader. That concludes the public comment section.
Let me ask a question. I mistakenly, I guess, submitted in writing, but I came in person to give my comments.
Okay, Mr. Andrews, what's your name, sir?
Hans Klein from Georgia
Hans
Tech.
Klein.
And you did give a quick summary, but if I could get my 2 minutes, I'd be most grateful.
You know what? I apologize. Your form was stuck behind Mr. Rader's. I apologize. Yes,
Great.
sir.
Thank you. I'm Hans Klein from Georgia Tech at the School of Public Policy. I am a transit supporter and a MARTA supporter, but I come here today to urge the MARTA board to ensure that MARTA upholds the highest technical, economic, and administrative standards for planning and evaluation of the more MARTA projects, and especially the streetcar on the Beltline. MARTA does not have federal funding, as I understand it, for the streetcar extension or other projects, and therefore it may not be required to uphold the high standards that attach to federal support from the Federal Transit Administration. Even without those requirements, I would urge the MARTA board to ensure that MARTA itself upholds the highest standards for evaluating and planning this project and other projects. As far as I can determine, and this isn't perfect because I don't have access to all information, but I have not found a rigorous analysis of at least some of these issues. Ridership study. What's the current demand for transit on the Beltline? What's the projected demand? Operating costs. Once the streetcar is deployed, what will be its costs and what kind of a burden will that place on MARTA? I haven't seen a rigorous study of that. Visual presentation of how this will impact the Beltline and the linear park. I'd love to see an accurate presentation, visuals of what this will look like. Construction duration and impact. What's this going to do with the building of the streetcar on the Beltline? Will be incredibly disruptive. The Beltline has something like 1 million visitors a year, and you're going to have 1 million pissed off people once that turns into a giant construction site. You should really think about that and plan for that. Alternatives analysis, what are the alternative technologies? We've seemed to have latched onto the streetcar right from the beginning. That doesn't seem to be the best way. An alternatives analysis would be good. And of course, a capital budget analysis. What happens if the money from more MARTA sales tax runs out? So in summary, I do support transit in Atlanta, but Atlanta, we have to do it well. I urge MARTA to uphold the highest standards, especially those imposed by the Federal Transit Administration on federally funded projects. I do have copies of my comments. I'll leave them on the table over there. Thank you very much for this opportunity
Absolutely.
to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. That now concludes the public comment portion of our meeting. Before we move into the agenda, I think we need to turn it over to Mr. Andrews because we'll need to amend the agenda for purposes of settlements and Summerhill BRT real estate matter.
Yes, sir. So we will need to amend the agenda to add a resolution authorizing the 4th round of acquisition offers and settlements for rights-of-way and easements in support of the Summerhill Bus Rapid Transit Project, as well as the settlement, a potential settlement of Macy v. MARTA and Sheely v. MARTA and Michael Rimmer.
Do I hear a motion to amend the agenda to add those items to other matters? Moved by Ms. Ide, seconded by Mr. Durrett. Can we please vote by show of hands for amending the agenda? Unanimous. Thank you. So we will now move on with the agenda as amended. The first item on that agenda is approval of the March 9th, 2023 board meeting minutes that are in your packet and on your screens. I will entertain a motion for approval. Moved by Durrett, seconded by someone, by Ms. Williamson. Any discussion? Please vote. And the approval of the minutes passes. Moving on to the next agenda item, we will hear from the Business Management Committee from Chairman Jim Durrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Business Management Committee met on Thursday, March the 30th of 2023 and approved the following resolutions. A, resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of investment advisory services, RFP P50072. B, resolution authorizing the award of a contract for professional services for investment management, letter of agreement, LOA, L50288. C, resolution authorizing a modification and contractual authorization for maintenance of parking control equipment contract, RFP P46686. And D, a resolution authorizing a modification and contractual authorization for mass notification system, RFPP P48760, utilizing the federal government General Services Administration contract. I request approval of these resolutions.
Chairman Durrett moves approval of these resolutions. Can we get a second? It has been moved and seconded. Please vote. The resolution's passed.
Mr. Chairman, this concludes my report.
Thank you, Chair Durrett. Next, we will have a report from the Planning and Capital Programs Committee presented by Vice Chair of that committee, Mr. Zagabe. Mr. Zagabe.
Mr. Chairman, the Planning and Capital Programs Committee met on Thursday, March 30th, 2023, and approved the following resolutions. A, resolution authorizing the disposal of permanent easements to the Georgia Department of Transportation, GDOT, in the amount of $49,800 for traffic signal upgrades at 4 tracks along State Route 29/Lee Street within GDOT Parcel 6, MARTA Parcel D4186B, Fulton County, Atlanta, Georgia. B, resolution authorizing award of a contract for the procurement of I-285 top-end BRT planning study, RFP P50012. C, resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of general planning consulting services, RFP F50097. D, resolution to approve a framework to guide completing a comprehensive bus network redesign. E, resolution to approve the locally preferred alternative for the Atlanta Streetcar East Extension Project. F, resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for a system-wide communications-based train control, CBTC, RFP P50319. G, resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for the Automated Transit Network, ATN, pilot project, RFP P50320. I request approval for these resolutions.
Chairman Durrett? Oh, okay. All right, knowing that Agenda Resolution E may have a vote that is not connected with the other resolutions from this committee, I would entertain a motion to remove Resolution E for a separate vote and let us vote on the other bulk of resolutions that I think has unanimous support. I will entertain that motion.
I would make that motion, sir.
And I would second.
Okay. Moved and seconded. All vote to amend the agenda to remove Resolution E regarding the Streetcar East Extension Project out of the list moved by Mr. Zagabe. Please raise your hand. Okay, so we will take up resolutions A, B, C, D, F, and G. And now we can, as soon as the technical stuff, there we go. All right. I will entertain a motion for those resolutions. It's not popping. So the adjustment has been made in the system to take E out for separate discussion and vote, but my vote is not popping up. Can you please put me in the affirmative? Okay. That passes. Thank you. All right. Now, as it relates to Resolution E, the resolution to approve the locally preferred alternative for the Atlanta Streetcar East Extension Project, is there any discussion? He moved it. I guess I do need a second. Thank you. Second. Okay. Any discussion? All right.
I feel compelled to say something.
Okay.
Chair. And my colleagues know how I feel about this project. And while I believe it is a mistake to extend the streetcar to the Beltline and onto the Beltline, out of respect for the wishes of the mayor's administration and others that have been working with MARTA on this, I will abstain from voting because I cannot vote for it, but I will not vote against it. So I just want to be clear how I feel about it.
Mayor Floyd.
Yeah, just a few questions. Since we're doing this way, I mean, I really believe this is an Atlanta decision, and I think it's, you know, it's their money and it's their board members, and I think that's where it ought to be. I'm like Jim. I have some issues about this. I'm going to vote one way or the other, but I do have some issues with this. But I think my questions concern, Collie, the procedure from here on. What we've actually voting on a local preferred alternative. There's a lot of work to be done, obviously, before we get to the point to where a train car runs down the belt line. And it seems to me that we need to see not just this board, but everybody needs to see what this is going to look like, how it's going to do, and there needs to be some points along this way where we can say, holy crap, that's not what we thought it was going to be. That's not what it's going to look like. The ridership is not. There needs to be some points to where we can reconsider, or Atlanta can reconsider what they're getting into. That this is not the die is not 100% cast today. And I think we need to understand that. I'm not looking necessarily for, yeah, here are the dates when these decisions are going to be made. But I think more an understanding that at some point in time, we're going to be look at something else and be asked to say, this is what it's going to look like. Is this what you really want? Because I think, I mean, the Beltline is an incredible thing. I mean, Brian Gravel, what he came up with there is just enormous. And it's shown by the fact that you can't hardly walk down the blooming thing on a weekend. And the thing is, if you put a train down there, what's that going to do? What's the impact that that's going to have on it? And maybe we don't realize that. Maybe we do. Maybe it's fine. But so I'm going to vote. I'm going to vote for this. But I want to know that I'm not totally out of line by saying at some point in time we're going to look at some more information and some more details and get a chance to say, I wish we hadn't done this, or I'm okay with it. Let's move on, as long as it's going to look like it. Is that a question you can answer?
Oh, first of all, it makes perfect sense, Mayor Floyd, and what I will say is this: there will be other intersection opportunities between MARTA staff working on it and our board in terms of, you know, the various modes and where we plan to implement them, and there will be an opportunity, you know, those points for the board to opine or object or state their comments at that point. As I understand it, today's vote is selecting an LPA and enabling the group to continue moving forward in that vein, but it's not the final opportunity to opine on this process.
Ms. Hardage.
I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot, but I feel the same way. I mean, I'm voting to move what Atlanta wants done. I'm not here because I have a big say in the day-to-day on the Beltline and using this. But that being said, if any of our Atlanta board members feel strongly one way or the other, I would welcome your comments.
Going in order of folks requesting to speak, Ms. Scott, you're next.
I'd like to clarify what I've heard and just make sure we state it. Strictly Atlanta funds.
So what is the question? Are we using strictly more MARTA Atlanta funds for this?
That's the question.
For this project, yeah. As it stands right now, we have our HDR model, which identifies how much funding is going to be a part of this, and it is more MARTA City of Atlanta funding.
Not a sharing of federal funds?
Not our core penny, and I'm not sure if anyone here is from the technical team specific to that, but my understanding is there's no federal funds involved in that. Correct, okay. Thanks, Carrie, I didn't see you there.
Thank you.
Mr. Zagabe.
Perfect. Thank you. So first, on the clarification of no federal funds, totally aligned. There's no federal funds going forward. That said, there have been federal funds expended on early designs through ABI, is my understanding there. So no federal funds on the actual implementation, but there have been some early in design. Correct. We'll come back to that. But just a couple thoughts. One, I think, you know, the mayor's administration in Atlanta has been very clear this is a priority. So, you know, there is a lot of support within the city of Atlanta for it. You know, from where I sit, just a couple comments. I think one, you know, as we go forward, I think there are two groups, and I want to be really clear. There are groups that think this is a good project. and there's a group that thinks it's a bad project, right? And I think as we go forward, we have to be really clear on there are individuals who don't believe that transit should be on the Beltline at all. And as we think about what's happening here, I think, we have to be clear where that is versus, folks who want transit and then they're concerned about the mode, right? So as we think about that, I think that's an important point. Two, to the group that, pushes on, hey, should it be rail or should it be emerging transit? What I will say is, a lot of work has been done to discuss this, to look at it. I think as we go forward, it'll be really important just to pull forward that early planning work that MARTA has done that articulates the cost associated with it. And from my time at the mayor's office, my understanding is, this is a very expensive project no matter what mode you put on it. So it's not like changing the mode all of a sudden makes this a very low-cost project. There's a lot of earthwork that needs to be done. The right-of-way is there, but there's still a lot of costs entailed as we think about it. And then just third, look, there's a big expansion program ahead within Atlanta. And I think that as we go, what we need is conviction, because we won't have consensus on everything. So, as we go forward with this, I think the LPA does not lock us into saying this is exactly what it is, but it does lock us on mode, and it locks us on alignment. And, I think we have to have conviction going forward, not just saying, hey, we're voting yes because we don't want to make a decision today and we plan on pulling it later. Like, this is, an important vote. This is an exciting point for this project. And, the LPA does articulate how this project will move. There's a lot of design work to come that'll say exactly what it looks like, what it feels like in the corridor, all of that. But, this is one that I will be supporting.
Ms. Ide?
Yeah, thank you. And I do want to thank my colleagues for their questions and for their deference to this as a City of Atlanta matter that's before us today for the vote. And, from my time on City Council and from my discussions with the Mayor's office and the current City Council, this piece of it has been identified as a priority piece of it. It doesn't mean that transit on the Beltline is being decided today with this vote. This was one section that it made sense to the city to move forward with at this point, and I think there needs to be a lot more discussion on, what happens, with the rest of the Beltline, transit, no transit, what mode, where the funding's coming from, is there federal funding that it qualifies for? And so, I appreciate Mayor Floyd, you saying that, of like, this is one piece we're doing today, and there are a lot more discussions that are going to need to happen. But for this segment, it is one that the City of Atlanta has identified that they want to spend our tax dollars on to do this segment today. So, I appreciate, even though there may not be a unanimous consensus among all of the board members that this is what you would do if it was in your jurisdiction. It is discussions that Jacob and Mr. Mellis and I have had with the City of Atlanta. It is a City of Atlanta priority that's before us today. But thank you.
I would like to indulge my colleagues for one final comment before I call for the vote. As I've been thinking about this since the committee meeting where it was brought up and voted out, I have also done a lot of research, and I have spoken with a lot of folks that were involved with Beltline Inc. and Beltline Partnership very early on in the process when this dream was becoming a reality. Spoken to previous landowners that sold the land to some parcels of the land to the Beltline. And I've spoken to former administration officials going back to multiple mayoral administrations, all the way back pre-Mayor Franklin. And what I have found out is as the Beltline dream was becoming a reality, MARTA was purposely shut out of those conversations. And there's a lot of different reasons why people think that. I heard so many different opinions that I don't even want to say them out loud, because some people thought it was stigma. Some people thought that MARTA didn't have any money, so they weren't a player. Some people, there's a lot of different reasons why MARTA was shut out. But MARTA was shut out as this project was coming to fruition, 8, 9, 10 years ago, and that's fact. And now the disagreement comes to our doorstep, and I just want to put this out there that all of you that spoke against this, I hear you loud and clear, And I guarantee you that my commitment to you is I will be asking the hard questions, but I will be voting in favor of this today because of exactly what we talked about, that it's Atlanta's money and the mayor has made this a priority. But I want us to make sure that history doesn't repeat itself, because MARTA needs to be in the conversation rather than a controversy coming to us in the middle of the board meeting, in my opinion. So with that, if there's any other comments or questions, I will call for the vote. Yes, sir, we have to vote by hand. All those in favor of Resolution E, resolution to approve the locally preferred alternative to the Atlanta Streetcar East Extension Project, all those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, please raise your hand. All abstentions, please raise your hand. So that is 8 in favor, 2 abstained. The resolution passes. Ms. Johnson, I know that you came in late and missed public comment. I know that's what you were wanting to comment on. If you would like to, we will definitely recognize you at the end of this meeting. We just have a few more agenda items to go through. Moving on to the agenda item, Operations and Safety Committee report. Chairman Pond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the Operations and Safety Committee met on Thursday, March 30th, 2023, and approved the following resolutions. A resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of FM 205 suppression systems inspection and testing services, AFB B50144. Resolution B, authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of customized bomb truck for the MARTA Police Services, B50206. C, resolution authorizing a modification in contractual authorization for transit operator training courses, RFP P455519. D, authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of 15 Braun Type 1AD minivans, RFP P50253, utilizing the State of Oklahoma state contract. E, resolution authorizing a modification in contractual authorization for MARTA's natural gas supply, which is IFB B42422. And F, resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of MARTA buses and electric buses, RFP P50104. I request approval for these resolutions.
Mr. Pond has moved approval of those resolutions. Can we send it for the votes? Is it? Oh, it's been moved and seconded. My voting is still not popping up. There it is. All right.
The committee received the following briefing for heavy rail wheel set service supply chain issues. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my report.
Thank you, Chairman Pond. Next, we'll have a report from the External Relations Committee. Chair Scott.
The External Relations Committee met on Thursday, March 30th, 2023, and received the following briefing: media impressions update. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my report.
Thank you, Chair Scott. We will have a report from the Audit Committee meeting. Chairman Frierson.
Mr. Chairman, the Audit Committee met on Thursday, March the 23rd, 2023, and received the following briefings: an internal audit activity, and B, a cybersecurity briefing. Mr. Chairman, and this concludes my report.
Thank you, Chair Frierson. Moving on to other matters, Mr. Andrews.
Yes, sir. We have those three matters we added. I'll start with the resolution. It's a resolution authorizing the fourth round of acquisition offers and settlements for right-of-way and easements in support of the Summerhill Bus Rapid Transit Project, City of Atlanta, Fulton County, Georgia. Whereas pursuant to the MARTA Act of 1965 as amended, MARTA exists for purposes of planning, designing, leasing, purchasing, acquiring, holding, owning, constructing, improving, equipping, financing, maintaining, and administering a rapid transit system within the metropolitan area and operating the same. And whereas MARTA operations staff has identified a public need to acquire property within the city of Atlanta, Fulton County, Georgia, and the city is within the territorial jurisdiction of MARTA. Whereas MARTA will expand its rapid transit system by developing, maintaining, and operating a bus rapid transit project known as the Summerhill BRT, located within the city. And whereas MARTA Planning and Capital Programs has identified that certain real property located adjacent to the Summerhill BRT corridor, City of Atlanta, Fulton County, State of Georgia, for acquisition to facilitate Summerhill BRT project. And whereas MARTA and the city executed a rapid transit contract and assistance agreement as amended and a project-based agreement executed on March 25, 2022, whereby the parties agreed to coordinate their efforts regarding the expansion of MARTA's rapid transit system, including without limitation, the city agreeing to work with MARTA and upon the request of MARTA to exercise its eminent domain power to acquire any property rights and interests necessary for MARTA to carry out its purpose as stated in the MARTA Act. And whereas, upon the city's approval, MARTA will submit offers to the fee owners of the properties in the amount of the appraised values. If negotiations of fair and equitable purchase terms are not successful, then MARTA will request the city initiate condemnation proceedings. Resolved, therefore, by the Board of Directors of the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority that in accordance with the policies and procedures previously adopted by the Board, the acquisition of those real properties known as MARTA parcels B099, B100A, B105A, B110, B111, B112, B113, B114, B115, B116, B128, B137, B138, B150, B150A, B162, B167, and B189 as identified as Exhibit A attached here to and incorporated herein by reference are hereby determined to be necessary for the construction, operation, and maintenance of the authority's bus rapid transit system, and hereby is approved provided the acquisition costs do not exceed the estimate of just compensation as further identified in Exhibit A. Be it resolved, therefore, that the general manager, CEO, or his delegate is hereby authorized to offer and execute acquisition agreements and/or other settlements with the fee simple owner or owners for the acquisitions of the properties, and in the event a mutual agreement or settlement is unsuccessful, to request the City of Atlanta to initiate condemnation proceedings.
We're going to have to vote on this by hand, so I will entertain a motion to adopt the resolution read by council.
I'll move approval.
Moved by Hartage, seconded by Durrett. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Commissioner McMurray, I trust that you're in the... Okay, agenda item number 2 and other matters.
I need a motion to approve a settlement in the amount of $450,000 in the case of Tina Macy versus MARTA.
I'll move approval.
Moved by Durrett, second by Pond. Any discussion? Please vote. All in favor, raise your hand. No opposed. Agenda item number 3.
A settlement, or I need a motion to approve a settlement in the amount of $600,000 in the case of Gerald Sheely v. MARTA and Michael Rimmer.
I'll move approval.
Moved by Durrett, seconded by Hartage. Any discussion? Please vote by raising your hand if you're in the affirmative. That passes. Moving back to public comment, Ms. Johnson, would you like your 2 minutes?
All right. Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman Worthy. Thank you, Board, for your flexibility. My name is Jill Johnson. I'm the Vice President of Government Affairs with Atlanta Beltline, Inc., and I just want to thank the Board for your conversation today about adopting the locally preferred alternative for the Atlanta Streetcar East Extension. Just to add a little bit more color and background to the conversation that we're having and will continue to have, we are seeing the city of Atlanta transform into a more accessible and livable place. We're seeing improved mobility and a lot more compact, vibrant development. A lot of that is in part due to the Atlanta Beltline and the changes that are coming to the city. Just some facts to clarify some of the things mentioned earlier. The Atlanta Beltline sees more than 2.1 million visitors per year around the corridor. We have seen since the beginning of the project more than $8.3 billion invested within a half mile of the corridor. And what that means is new job centers being created, new economic vibrancy. That translates into more than 48,000 one-year construction jobs and more than 24,000 permanent jobs. It's changing the origins and destinations and how people travel throughout the city. We know that we need these new mobility options. The trail is one part of the Atlanta Beltline, but like board member Zagabe mentioned earlier, the trail has always been designed with transit, adjacent transit in mind wherever possible. And we've received lots of support through the years from USDOT, from EPA, from the Economic Development Administration, and other federal agencies in support of this vision, in support of this project. We know that we need to continue to grow these mobility options, that not everybody can get on a bike, not everybody can walk long distances, in order for folks to reach these job centers, to reach schools, to connect neighborhoods in ways that have been not connected for a long period of time. And we know that this will also help connect people into the regional transit network. So it won't just be a benefit for the city, but for the entire region. So I want to thank you. I do want to emphasize that, we're here and our CEO, Clyde Higgs, we're listening. We've got open ears, open minds, listening to the concerns expressed today. We want to continue to have this conversation. We recognize that it's early in the process. There's a lot of decisions still to be made in terms of design, but we look forward to working with MARTA. We understand the challenges of implementing complex projects. We thank General Manager Greenwood for his leadership and his ability to have these tough conversations with us and the city as we move forward. So thank you for consideration, and we look forward to talking.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Are there any other comments to be made by board members? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.